また明日のヒーローズカムバック頭上数え指折るカウンダウン行くぜ3、2、1 make some noise.
Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain, and ReZero is a really engaging show that I watched somewhat late in the game, relatively speaking, but after seeing about 2,354 anime vines featuring this scene, alongside every anime fan in the solar system praising Rem, it was clear to me that this show was worth checking out at least. Long story short, I enjoyed it a lot, but the one question that stuck with me is now in the title of this video. This won't be a full review of the show itself, so much as it will be looking to discuss a possible answer. If you haven't seen the show yet, there will obviously be spoilers, so there's your warning. Let us start with Natsuki Subaru, an average ordinary kid who somehow gets transported to a magical world where every time he dies, he gets brought back to a save point, kind of like Dark Souls but with anime characters. Subaru eventually becomes privy to his curse, but can't tell anyone about it. But he uses it to fix problems and eventually stop a fate he once thought inevitable. For my fellow Steins Gate fans, it's kind of like the Okabe Mayuri situation after his team discovers that they can travel back in time and change past events. What's important to note about all of this is that Subaru is not some shonen hero or an overpowered isekai protagonist, he's just a kid. He can't really do too much on his own to start compared to the other characters, and even when he tries doing the right thing, it often backfires. He's defined less by his skill set and more by his lively personality, which is by far the most definitive and memorable part about him. In time, he learns to use what he has and who he is to do more, figure things out, and save the day in unconventional ways, including a brilliant 2-on-1 fight against Betelgeuse near the end. It's a really good character arc. But what more people seem interested in talking about is the best girl. I wanted to first discuss how Subaru progressed during the show because it directly connects to Emilia, who he falls in love with. This is important because it's this love that drives many of his actions. As I mentioned, he doesn't have a ton going for him early on, and even finds a way to die in episode 1, but Emilia is his primary motivation to do more, because in his mind, from the very beginning, she's worth doing more for. That's why he asks her out on several occasions despite dying before those proposed dates, and more dramatically, that's why he fights a school of whales after convincing Crush and others to join his cause. That last point is in the aftermath of the one scene everyone who's watched this show recalls immediately. But, for me, finally watching that scene with context after countless memes and video edits just felt a little off. I already knew the jokes being made about the scene, but the setup to the punchline seemed non-existent. So many people seem to think that Rem was betrayed or that Subaru made the obviously wrong choice, or even more shockingly, some people are genuinely surprised that this was Subaru's response. And yet, if you actually watch the show to that point, there is no reason to think of his response as all that jarring. Now, let me make myself perfectly clear when I say that I'm not here to tell you that Emilia should be best girl or some such nonsense. I'm not big on that type of debate or the facepalm-inducing arguments they tend to create. I'm here to engage in an open, general discussion with you, the viewers, regarding what we're really talking about when we say best girl. Because from where I'm standing, Rem is a better developed character than Emilia. In fact, her and Rem are the only ones who get a real backstory, and it's a pretty damn good one. The whole struggling with superiority thing, mixed in with the guilt of being the superior twin, was a great angle to take with Rem. It might have worked a little better if Ram herself was more narratively important, but maybe Season 2 will handle that, who knows. The point is that as far as Season 1 of ReZero goes, Rem is both a really good character and a really important one, very much deserving of the praise and the popularity, and early on, there is clear evidence that Subaru cares about her. Now let's get back to that famous scene. What many people seem to forget about this is what happened just before it. Subaru was down on himself, looking to give up on his aspiration of saving Emilia and everyone else from a seemingly unstoppable threat. It's then, and only then, when he decides that Rem would be a great partner for what is essentially his plan B. Subaru isn't suddenly realizing he loved Rem the whole time, that never happens. He's settling for her, because in his mind, the woman he actually loves is unreachable now. It's pretty low of Subaru, considering he's a pretty good character in most other respects, but it's important to understand that this is his lowest point, which is really saying something, considering he's literally died multiple times by this episode. Rem delivered a really great speech about the Subaru she knows, but even from her side of things, even when she was talking about the idea of having kids with him, it didn't strike me as romantic, it struck me more as sisterly, which is the perfect way to describe their relationship up until that point. And regardless of Rem's romantic intentions, let's not kid ourselves by pretending that Subaru ever wanted her in the same way. It's near the end of episode 11, an episode literally titled Rem, that Subaru asks out Emilia again and she definitively says yes. The show was always fairly explicit with his leanings long before From Zero kicked in. It's primarily Emilia who gets special treatment from him, while he usually treats Rem more or less like he would treat Ram or even Beatrice. The difference is, those two aren't even close to being into him, nor do they get as much focus as Rem. Emilia challenges Subaru the most to be better, both directly and indirectly. Her role in this world is of extreme importance, a role that sometimes isn't assisted by Subaru's interference, and she doesn't just let that slide either. She knows that Subaru has to be better than this. And then, after the world starts falling apart in the aftermath of that, Subaru does become better. He learns diplomacy and negotiating. He works with other major leaders that would never help him out of pure kindness alone and wins them over. Not through blind heroics or being some quasi-white knight, but by learning the rules that Emilia's world plays by. And that's the biggest difference between first half of the show Subaru versus second half. That's the key change that converts him from a ball of energy into a memorable character with a real arc. But the fact that he changed at all can primarily be tied back to his feelings for Emilia, feelings he starts having in the very first episode. His development after that, including those aforementioned negotiations, is spurred on by both Rem and Emilia, but what both sides of that means is different from Subaru's perspective. This isn't to say that Rem doesn't have an enormous impact on him. From Zero gave her a powerful platform that helped Subaru through his despair. As I said, Rem is a really good character, but most of what makes her great has very little to do with Subaru, and she never challenges him in the same way that Emilia does. In fact, when Subaru plans to mess up that big important gathering that Emilia told him not to attend, Rem lets him, which goes back to the whole sibling vibe I got from the two of them. Rem always knew that Subaru's heart belonged to Emilia, and she was more than okay with that. Their relationship is well depicted, but that doesn't automatically make it a romantic relationship. And the dynamic between two characters doesn't need to be that to be good or memorable. There's more than one way to love someone. Switching gears back to Emilia, even for as important as she is, Subaru still convinces her to agree to things outside of her comfort zone, which makes sense, since even though Emilia could rule the world someday, she never has a large ego about it. And despite the fact that she looks like this world's version of the Antichrist basically, she still wants to help people, including the people that unfairly chastise her for surface level features. Even though she suffers from a lack of development compared to the other two main characters, there is still a lot to respect about her. And both her and Subaru go through significant changes with respect to each other because they both challenge and influence each other. For some, myself included, my aforementioned points are more than enough to justify not feeling at all betrayed or even that surprised by the famous scene. And if you really love Rem as a character that much, Subaru's rejection should have been a good thing for you. She was the girl Subaru wanted to be with after giving up hope, as you'll recall, and Rem deserves a better foundation for a potential relationship than that. But that then begs the question of the day. What is a best girl? Is it the best developed girl? Someone who could possibly be called the best character in the show? Is it the most important girl? Because then you have to bring Crush into the debate, who could make for a pretty good ruler herself. Is it the best girl for the main guy? Because the answer here is certainly not as one-sided as many would have you believe. Or is it simpler than that? Is it simply the girl you like the most, regardless of how she functions in the narrative she's in? Are we telling ourselves that Rem and Subaru are a good match because he should have chose her? Or because we would have? These are the questions that interest me, because there's a lot of talk about best girls thrown around in the anime community. It's easy and fun to have a best girl, but I think it's more interesting to understand why someone's a best girl, even beyond this show. I assume the question may be asked of me, so I'll give you some personal examples of each question I posed. Is the best girl the best female character in the show? For me, Anna from Shaman King fits that billing, not that she has much competition in her show. Anna is always pushing Yo to be better, in addition to mellowing out herself. There's a patient way she goes from very demanding to more understanding, which made her memorable for me. Is the best girl the most important girl? Yu Yu Hakusho isn't exactly a girls' club either, but Botan would fit that role for me. She does kind of get phased out in terms of overall importance later on, but early on, she's invaluable. Not just with informing Yusuke of his missions, but also assisting in the field. Is a best girl the girl who is the best fit for the main guy? Then I'd go with C2, not because she and Lelouch have a romantic relationship, but because the way they play off each other is interesting to me, and it works well in the show. And having a good relationship shouldn't necessitate romance for every given instance, especially in a not very romantic anime. Is the best girl just the girl you like the most, with or without context? This naturally divides into the distinct categories of romantic attraction, aka the waifu, versus a more platonic attraction. For me, the romantic side is dominated by several Pokemon gym leaders and one champion, along with Makise Kirisu, Asuna Yuki, Miss Kobayashi, yes the human and not the dragons, Asuka Soryu, Sakie Sato, and a number of others. The platonic side is more someone I just enjoy watching, or can relate to in a non-romantic way. I think of Tomoko Kuroki, Mio Akiyami, Satsuki Kiryuin, and more recently, Sarada Uchiha, who within seconds of her arrival became one of my favorite ninjas ever. The last question involves a bit of projecting ourselves onto the scenario. Do we choose either Rem or Emilia as best girl because we would do exactly what Subaru did, or because we would do exactly the opposite? For me, Hinata is the easiest example. Her relationship with Naruto wasn't the most exceptional in terms of build-up, mainly because of Naruto himself, but I still adore it. And at least part of why is because I absolutely would have made the same choice as Naruto, and seeing Hinata happy was more important to me than how she ended up happy on a narrative level. However, on the flip side of that, I can't really think of a single anime where the chosen pairing left me feeling all that betrayed or confused about the choice. I'd love to see you guys come up with examples of that beyond this show because, honestly, I got nothing. All in all, I'm not going to argue for Rem over Emilia or vice versa as best girl, because I think that's antithetical to the point of this video, and ReZero as a show so far has a lot more to offer than the overly referenced I Love Emilia moment. But, since that moment is so popular, I think it's worth it to discuss the ideas surrounding it. Even those of you who have never seen this particular show can probably add a lot to the broader conversation, and I encourage you to do so. And as always, thanks for watching.